Chuck Jones is arguably the most well-known of all the main Looney Tunes directors. He has made many memorable cartoons that are considered classics today, such as One Froggy Evening, Duck Amuck, What's Opera Doc, and many, many more. And yet, despite making cartoons from the 1930s all the way up to the late 90s, he's still mainly well known for his Looney Tunes work, along with the animated classic How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Maybe some of his Tom and Jerry shorts if you pay attention to the credits. But what else did he do? And are these cartoons any good? Are any of them worth revisiting? Well, let's find out in this series that I'm calling After the Looney Tunes. While Chuck Jones left the Warner Brothers studio proper in 1962, he had initially left in 1953 due to the shutdown of the animation studio there and worked at the Walt Disney Studios for 4 months doing some work on Sleeping Beauty with Ward Kimball. Ultimately, Jones disliked his time at the Disney studio, mainly due to the fact that Walt needed to approve things personally, and the process overall was incredibly slow. Chuck didn't really do anything of note at the company, and watching Sleeping Beauty shows absolutely no signs of his involvement.
Oh no! No! I can't believe it! No! And we thought she'd be so happy.
Which is no surprise, given how early production of the movie would have been at that stage in time. Chuck had joked that the only job he wanted at Disney was already filled by Walt. It was in 1962 when Chuck Jones was fired from the Warner Brothers studio. His last fully completed cartoon there was War and Pieces, which ended up being released in 1964, featuring the Roadrunner and Coyote, while the short The Iceman Ducketh, released in 1964, was started by Jones but ultimately completed by animator Phil Monroe, giving him credit along with co-director Maurice Noble. So why was Jones fired? Over at UPA Studios, former Chuck Jones animator Abe Levitow had directed a movie called Gay Purr-ee, released in 1962, which was written by Chuck Jones and his wife at the time, Dorothy Jones. It was also produced by Chuck as well, which, according to Warner Brothers, went against his exclusivity agreement with them. As for the film itself, one could call it a Chuck Jones film that isn't a Chuck Jones film. Director Levitow had the uncanny ability of being able to draw exactly like Jones, that if one were to see the film without knowing the credits, they might think it's a Chuck Jones film.
One big throb. Music, music, my love for you is formidable. Your smile starts the day with a bright and gay bonjour. Your laugh is allé, and your voice is vive l'amour.
It is a well-made film, and was a well-received film despite doing poorly at the box office. It features some wonderful animation and design, and it also features Judy Garland, best known for The Wizard of Oz, in her only animated role, though some have argued that the role was miscast.
Oh no! I'm a failure!
The songs aren't particularly memorable, but overall it's definitely worth a look. The film is available to purchase through Warner Archive in a brand new restoration on Blu-ray. Jones created his own animation studio called SIP Tower 12 Productions, and MGM Studios contracted Jones to make new cartoons for them, including a new series of Tom and Jerry shorts. By this time, the original directing team of Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera had started their own studio and created many cartoons directly for television, such as The Flintstones and The Jetsons. There was a very strange run of 13 cartoons made by animation director Gene Deitch and his studio for MGM, which showed that there was still an interest in Tom and Jerry shorts. So between 1963 and 1967, 34 new Tom and Jerry shorts were created, all of which were produced by Jones, with most of them directed or co-directed by him. The results were mixed at best, with Jones himself admitting that he had some trouble adapting to the characters. The characters had been redesigned, and the shorts overall have a different look. Personally, while I feel these shorts are nowhere near as good as the Hanna-Barbera shorts, or are close to being some of the best Chuck Jones shorts, they can be quite fun at times. In fact, some of them even feel like spiritual successors of Jones's Roadrunner cartoons. This is one of those cases where it's probably best to judge for yourself. The complete run of Tom and Jerry shorts that Jones produced for MGM have been released by Warner Home Video. During this time, Jones created a one-off animated short called The Dot and the Line that was released in 1965, and that was based off a book by the same name, narrated by Robert Morley. It won Jones the 1965 Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film, and is also considered one of Jones's best works. The story features a straight line who is hopelessly in love with a dot, who sadly finds the line to be quite dull and prefers the wild and unconventional squiggle. The line realizes that he too can be unconventional and can create angles out of himself. It is a wonderful short which shows just how good Jones was with his timing and how great he was at giving personality to the simplest of objects. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't already. The other non-Tom and Jerry MGM short that Jones did also happened to be the very last theatrical short MGM released in 1967, called The Bear That Wasn't, which was based off a book by former Warner Brothers animation director Frank Tashlin. Tashlin was also listed as a producer, despite having no involvement in the short. Tashlin himself wasn't satisfied with this short, and since watching the short had not spoken to Jones. The short itself is about a bear who wakes up after hibernation in the middle of an industrial complex and is mistaken by the foreman for being a worker. The bear insists that he is a bear, but he is told by the foreman and his bosses that he's just a silly man who needs a shave and a haircut. The idea here is that if a lie is repeated enough to a person, then the idea can become accepted as truth even though it's not.
One day, a long time afterward, when the factory closed down for the night and the workers went home.
It is an interesting cartoon that has some wonderful vocal work by Paul Frees, some nice animation and backgrounds. In 1969, Jones created a TV special called The Pogo Birthday Special. This little scene special was based off of the comic strip Pogo, created by former Disney animator Walt Kelly. Kelly wrote the script and even provided some voices for the project. However, there were creative differences and the end result fails to convey the wit from Kelly's comic strip masterpiece. It isn't all bad, however, as it features some nice animation and backgrounds, and I do get a kick out of watching the characters being animated off the strip. Jones even provides some of the voice work himself, which actually works in my opinion. Ultimately though, this one is for completists only who want to check out everything that Chuck Jones had made, and at the time of this recording, it's not available on DVD, but it can be located online in a washed out quality.
Getting accused of snitching presents.
Quiet, everybody's. Here he is coming.
Good evening. I brung back the present which I inadvertently didn't steal from you.
A year later in 1970, Jones released another Dr. Seuss adaptation, this time of Horton Hears a Who. This special was adapted in the same way The Grinch was, with the book being expanded slightly to fit the running time through songs with lyrics by Seuss himself. While arguably not as good as The Grinch, it is considered to be a great adaptation that is worth watching, and unlike Pogo, it is widely available.
Be roped, he's going to be caged. Horton the elephant's going to be caged. He's going to be roped, he's going to be
And
caged.
as for your dust speck, that we will boil in a hot steaming kettle of hazelnut oil.
Boil my dust speck? No! That you can't do. It's all full of persons. I'll prove it to you.
Boil that dust speck, boil that dust speck, boil that dust speck.
Boil, 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 boil.
Hazelnut. Hazelnut.
Hazelnut oil. You who's don't give up. I believe in you all. A person's a person, no matter how small.
The last MGM project Jones worked on was released in 1970, but was actually made a few years prior. The Phantom Tollbooth was a feature-length animated project based on the book by the same name, with live-action bookends. The film stars Butch Patrick of the Munsters fame and features many of the top voice actors working at the time. The author of the book, Norman Juster, hated this project and felt that they didn't do a good job on it. To me, this is a film that has some entertaining sections and some wonderful characters, but these sections never quite gel together like they should. Again, this is one of those projects where you may need to see to judge for yourself.
Analyze, contemplate, take an hour and change the fate of the world. Time is a gift, give it to you, to give you the time you need to have the time of your life. The time you need to have the time of your life.
And so Jones opened up his own studio called Chuck Jones Enterprises. In 1971, he produced a children's show called The Curiosity Shop, which featured live action, puppets, and animation, clearly inspired by the success of Sesame Street. Jones himself provided the voice of a character simply known as the Animator. Sadly, this show is presumed lost, as Studio ABC at the time would regularly wipe videotapes for use for other programs. In terms of directing, in 1973, Jones directed an adaptation of The Cricket in Times Square, a children's book by George Selden, and after that also created two sequels, A Very Merry Cricket and Yankee Doodle Cricket. These TV specials showed how, despite having a lower budget, Jones was able to create shows featuring fuller animation than the other studios at the time, like Hanna-Barbera, and create some stunning imagery. The stories themselves aren't too memorable, but they are definitely worth watching.
The waste paper basket is burning. It's burning. It's burning. Ice. That's what we need.
Jones also adapted 3 Rudyard Kipling stories between 1975 and 1976, Rikki Tikki Tavi, The White Seal, and Mowgli's Brothers. Same with the Jones Cricket trilogy, these TV specials showcase Jones's talents for making the most of lower budgets. While all 3 are worth watching, the darker Mowgli Brothers is interesting to watch when compared to Disney's own Jungle Book.
He took his place at the Council Rock, too, when the pack met. And there he discovered that if he stared very hard at any wolf, the wolf would be forced to uneasily drop his eyes. And so, like any other boy, he stared at them for fun. But he learned kindness, too, and picked long thorns out of their paws, for wolves suffer terribly from thorns and burrs in their coats. His insatiable curiosity led him down the hillside into the cultivated lands by night, where he stared at the villagers and the fascinating habit they had of wearing extra skins on their bodies.
It was around this time that Jones returned to doing work for Warner Brothers, but we'll get to that in a moment. Jones would also work on 2 Raggedy Ann TV specials, The Great Santa Claus Caper and The Pumpkin Who Wouldn't Smile. Much like the Cricket and the Kipling trilogies, these showcase Jones's talent in expressive animation in a TV environment. For what they are, they're fun to see, although they're not particularly memorable, especially compared to the feature-length Richard Williams effort of a few years prior.
Love. It's love that broke the glue stick.
But what about me? Nobody loves me. I'll never get out. I gotta be a Christmas tree all my life. I'm a big bad wolf by trade. I don't know anything else.
And speaking of Richard Williams, in 1971, Williams directed a version of A Christmas Carol, which won the Academy Award for Best Animated Short, and that was executive produced by Chuck Jones.
Brings you here.
Your welfare. Rise and walk with me.
Good heavens. I was a boy here.
Your lip is trembling.
What?
And what is that upon your cheek?
Nothing. Nothing.
These are but shadows of the things that have been. They have no consciousness of us.
Also, in a change of pace, Chuck Jones tried his hand at doing his own comic book strip between 1977 and 1978 called Crawford. This wasn't particularly successful, although you can judge for yourself, as all of the strips have been collected in a collected edition book that was released some decades later. In 1976, Jones would return to doing new work for Warner Brothers to mixed results. His work would also be featured in various compilation TV specials, but here we will focus on the specials and movies that feature most or all new animation. First up was The Carnival of the Animals in 1976, which was a TV special featuring Bugs and Daffy performing, with Daffy bickering of course, with an orchestra conducted by Michael Tilson Thomas, playing selections of Saint-Saëns' Carnival of the Animals. While the music is playing, animated sections play, showcasing different animated styles representing the different styles of music. Overall, the special feels more like Fantasia Light, as opposed to, say, a follow-up to classics like What's Opera Doc, so if you're expecting something like that, you'll be most likely disappointed. Still, it's an interesting watch, if only for the nice music.
In the museum hall, the fossils gather for a ball. There were no drums or saxophones, but just the clatter of their bones. A rolling, rattling, carefree circus of mammoth polkas and mazurkas. Pterodactyls and brontosauruses sang ghostly prehistoric choruses. Amid the mastodonic wassail, I caught the eye of one small fossil. Cheer up, he said and winked. It's kind of fun to be extinct.
In 1978, another TV special directed by Jones appeared, only this time it is a fully animated TV special called A Connecticut Rabbit in King Arthur's Court. In this special, Bugs ends up in King Arthur's time and is taken by Sir Elmer of Fudd, being mistaken for a dragon. This special is very uneven, with very long sections of dialogue and a lack of focus. The gags from the joust in the last third of the special are quite funny, and do make the special worth watching at least once. And there are some great moments of wordplay here and there in the otherwise overlong dialogue scenes. And for an animated special at the time, the animation is actually quite decent.
Cheer up, Sir Osis of the Liver. A miss is as good as a mule. Right, mule? But so, what light from yonder window breaks? Well, it certainly isn't Juliet, unless she's grown a mustache.
In 1979, Jones had two projects come out, both of which fared much better than the previous two specials. One of which was the short Freeze Frame, which was Jones's first Roadrunner short since 1964, and showed that while his later Bugs and Daffy efforts were mixed at best, Jones' later Roadrunner shorts were really good, despite not being as stylistic as some of the late 50s shorts. This short appeared in the television special Bugs Bunny Looney Christmas Tales and was bookended by 2 other shorts directed by Friz Freleng. The short gives a nice little twist to the usual formula and goes all snow themed. The gags are clever and it is definitely a fun one to watch. Oh, and speaking of Roadrunner, Jones around this time also produced a few very quick shorts for the Electric Company children's show, although with a more educational bent. The other project was the theatrical compilation movie The Bugs Bunny Roadrunner Movie. This movie features some of Jones's best shorts, along with a selection of Roadrunner gags, all shown in a compilation. The movie features new wraparound sections featuring Bugs reminiscing on his past career. That actually works quite well here. This movie also allowed those who didn't see the shorts on the big screen from back when they were made to get a chance to do so, as opposed to watching the shorts on their small TV sets at home on Saturday mornings. You can't go wrong with this one.
In a way, I am an unusual rabbit on account of, instead of having hundreds of children, like your ordinary run-of-the-mill rabbit, I had several fathers. Fathers with odd names like Tex Avery, Friz Freleng, Chuck Jones, and Bob McKimson, the ones who directed most of me pictures. Fathers like Ted Pierce, Warren Forster, and Mike Maltese, who wrote most of me biography. And, of course, a father named Mel Blanc, who had thousands of voices and was nice enough to give me one of them.
Sadly, his last 2 TV specials in 1980 featuring all new shorts directed by Jones were average at best and mostly failed in recapturing the magic of the older shorts. The first one was Bugs Bunny's Busting Out All Over, featuring the new shorts Portrait of the Artist as a Young Bunny, Spaced Out Bunny, and Super or Sonic. Hands down, the Roadrunner short is the best and is the main reason why you would bother with this one. The other 2 shorts do have some nice animation and a few funny gags here and there, but they do fail in comparison to the older shorts. The other TV special was Daffy Duck's Thanks for Giving Special, which features the sequel to the masterpiece Duck Dodgers. Unlike the previous TV special, this one features a few classic shorts in the beginning, with wraparounds by Daffy trying to convince a TV producer to get a sequel to Duck Dodgers made. The actual short marked the first time since the late 50s that Jones worked with longtime collaborator and writer Michael Maltese on a Looney Tunes short, which also ended up being their last project together. As for the new short itself, it's no masterpiece, and it isn't great due to a lack of focus. It does feature, once again, some nice animation. A few gags here and there are funny, and it's also worth noting that the short itself was also released separately in a recut form that makes only a little bit of difference.
Back, underling! How can you expect me to be a crawling, cowardly poltroon with you in the way? Ow, Don't worry your cowardly ship, sir. I'll take care of everything with my Acme Monster hair clippers. Clippers? Oh, kid, come on, don't be a big baby. A haircut never hurt anybody.
Gossamer is quite nervous about barbers.
Projects, Jones ended up directing far less, but was active in different ways. He ended up painting and drawing artwork for animation galleries, and was involved in designing characters for films such as A Chipmunk Christmas, and he was also an animation consultant on Who Framed Roger Rabbit. The later film played a role in animation being rediscovered, so to speak, and not long after, Jones was directing cartoons again. Jones had also cameoed in 2 Joe Dante films, Gremlins and Inner Space. And not long after that, Jones animated the opening and closing sequences to the Gremlins sequel directed by Joe Dante.
Guess what? You've been promoted. Promoted? Me? Really? Little old me? I'm an executive? Absolutely. You're gonna be in charge of the titles on this feature picture. Really? And for true? Me? Now, I'll read the titles to you, and you get to punch them into the computer, okay? You may fire when ready, Grizzly. Okay, here we go. The main title of this epic is Gremlins 2. Gotcha.
Jones would also animate small sections of the films Stay Tuned in 1992.
Permanent crease in his shorts.
Identify yourself.
Catnip Ram.
And Mrs. Doubtfire in 1993.
Sono il factotum della città, sono il factotum della città, della città, della città, della città.
Salutations, snack.
Shape. On second thought.
Yay!
911, 911, police.
There was a resurgence of animation after Who Framed Roger Rabbit, becoming what some have termed another golden age. As such, Jones would end up producing and even direct a few new shorts for Warner Brothers in the early to mid-90s. The first short was Chariots of Fur in 1994, which was Jones's final Roadrunner short, and is easily the best of the 4 he directed. It's nicely animated, and unlike the previous Roadrunner shorts, this one features an orchestrated score in much higher quality than the original shorts. Next was the unneeded sequel to the masterpiece One Froggy Evening, released in 1995 as Another Froggy Evening.
Hello, my baby, hello, my honey, hello, my ragtime gal. Send me a kiss by wire. Baby, my heart's on fire. If you refuse me, honey, you'll lose me, then you'll be left alone. Oh, baby, telephone and tell me I'm your own.
Here we see the frog appear in many different time periods, essentially repeating the same story and lesson from the original short. Superior Duck was next released in 1996, featuring Frank Gorshin of all people as Daffy Duck. It's nothing too special and not particularly funny, but it is notable for being both the last Daffy Duck cartoon made by Jones and the only time Foghorn Leghorn and the Tasmanian Devil ever appeared in a Chuck Jones directed cartoon. The last short directed by Jones was From Here to Eternity in 1997, featuring Yosemite Sam and Bugs Bunny in a pirate-themed short, which features selections from Gilbert and Sullivan. Frisch Freleng had died not too long before this cartoon, and as such, this cartoon was a tribute to him.
You might try jumping on it.
Well, thank you, varmint. Never take a rabbit's advice. Now let me know the swing over there, little.
For a later effort, this one isn't too bad, and I'd argue this one feels a little fresher given that Jones never used Yosemite Sam during his time making the original shorts. In addition to directing during this time, he also produced a few other Looney Tunes shorts, such as Pulitzer Prize and Father of the Bird, both arriving in 1997. His very last project overall was producing an online Flash animated project in 2001 called Thomas Timberwolf. Even at this very late period of time, Jones could show he could produce something fun, even with the limitations of Flash animation at the time.
And what would a sprite like you do with money?
Well, eat it, of course, with a little Roquefort dressing.
I do believe that squirrel's plumb loco, screwy in the head, a few logs shy of a cabin, or to put it simply, that boy is nuts. Sure as my name's Thomas Timber! Well, it seems your efforts have proven fruitful, as you have just amputated my brush, performed an appendagectomy. My tale, in short, is ended.
He was also the character designer in the 1995 TV movie Peter and the Wolf. He didn't direct it, he only did the character designs, but by looking at the DVD cover, you'd probably think otherwise. Among his final directing and producing efforts, Jones also kept busy being involved in the Chuck Jones Gallery that was run by his daughter Linda Jones-Clow. He served on the advisory board of the National Student Film Institute, and he founded the Chuck Jones Center of Creativity, which is a center still being run today. In 1996, he won a Lifetime Achievement Oscar for, and I quote, "for the creation of classic cartoons and cartoon characters whose animated lives have brought joy to our real ones for more than half a century."
Well, what can I say in the face of such humiliating evidence? I stand guilty before the world of directing over 300 cartoons in the last 50 or 60 years. Hopefully, this means you've forgiven me.
Chuck Jones passed away in 2002, leaving behind a massive body of work spanning 6 decades. As mentioned in the beginning, he is mainly known for creating some of the best Looney Tunes cartoons ever made, and How the Grinch Stole Christmas. But as you saw in this video, he did a lot more than that. While not everything he did was as good or as memorable as his best-known works, there are works here that warrant some rediscovery, especially his later non-Looney Tunes projects from the 70s, and regardless of what one may think of his later Looney Tunes efforts from the 80s and 90s, you can't deny that at least he was passionate about the characters, and even those projects, if you watch them, have animation from people such as Eric Goldberg, who animated over at Disney on characters such as the Genie. So they are watching, at the very least, for that. So let me know in the comments below, have you seen any of these other Chuck Jones projects, and which ones do you think should be watched by others? But that'll do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care.